welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just drive. I wanna be the only one to make it through the light.
Hey guys, Dre back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome back to Dre TV. And in this episode we're going to be talking about some testing. We had the first round of F1 testing at Jerez last week, and I'm actually playing around Jerez by giving you a little bit of a throwback edition. I'm actually using F1 2013 and their classic edition to be able to play around Jerez in the 2013 now? 2013 Ferrari. Yes, it still feels kind of weird saying that when you're talking about the 2013 game and the 2013 cars, but you're talking about the 2015 season. It's all going to get a little bit confusing. But yeah, I'm going to talk over some testing and what happened in Jerez this past weekend, and past week I should say, because it was a 4-day test. Disclaimer. Let's not jump too far ahead to conclusions when it comes to these tests. Like, obviously, you know, certain things may or may not be sandbagging. We have no idea about what these cars are going to do at full chat, you know, in a race scenario. But there was definitely some notes you could take away from it. So I'm going to run it down team by team for the most part. Starting with Mercedes. And Mercedes, wow, well, they looked ominous again this test. They looked like nothing had changed. Like, Hamilton came out on the record and said he could barely tell the difference between the W06, the 2015 car, and the W05, the 2014 car, I should say. See, I'm getting confused already. But they racked up more laps than anybody else. I think there were over 100 laps on 3 of the 4 days. I think only on the bad day where they had a water pump problem, I think they still had 91 laps on the day. They racked up by a mile more laps than anybody else. They got a lot of testing in. The car seemed mostly reliable. A couple of niggles here and there, but nothing too serious. Time-wise, they weren't at the top that much. They were kind of in that 3, 4, 5 kind of range, but I suspect they were heavily sandbagging. I have no reason to doubt that Mercedes will be the team to beat. Again, once they roll around once we get to Australia, I think they've been heavily sandbagging for the most part, and I think we've yet to see anything close to what Mercedes' true pace could be. But you know, they'll take that as a very successful test. I mean, when you can see Rosberg racking up 150 laps in a day, which is more than twice of Jerez's actual race distance if it was a Grand Prix track. Still, I think it's a 72 lap race if it was done in full. So for that to still be a thing is alarming. They've already got, you know, they're already doing longer runs and comfortably doing longer runs like it's no big deal. So that was you know, ominous really, more than anything else. Williams seemed to plough on for the most part. They were unspectacular the whole test. They were kind of in the middle of the road for laps covered, and they were in the middle of the road on lap times too. Nothing particularly special from Bottas and Massa. They just seemed to stick to their own plan and really just, you know, go forth from there. You know, seemingly fine. Again, I think they're heavily sandbagging as opposed to what their true pace could be. Probably on heavier fuel loads and whatnot. But yeah, I think Williams will be adequately pleased with what they were in testing. It was quite similar to last year where they looked reliable and could surprise a few people. Maybe now that we expect them to be the second or third best team in that top tier, that maybe we kind of expect a little bit more from them now, and I think that might be part of the reason why their test was rather unspectacular, but it seemed to get the job done. Red Bull, because their Red Bull seemed to definitely turn some heads with their dazzle paint. And I guess you don't know what dazzle camo is. It's essentially what boats used to paint boats in that colour so that they couldn't be picked up on enemy ships' radar and sonar readings. That's why they painted their colour like that, to deliberately confuse people so they couldn't give away all their aerodynamic secrets straight away, and you'd have to have people guessing what the car looked like. Adrian Newey being Adrian Newey in what will be his final F1 car. But the Red Bull wasn't that great out there. I mean, it was one of the lesser teams when it came to laps racked up. Their car wasn't that reliable. There was still some power unit problems, which, you know, Renault still seem to be at the forefront of taking some flack for. I mean, they admitted they were 10% down on their rivals for car power last year. 10%. That's about 80 horsepower. So that it makes you wonder how the hell Red Bull got second in the constructors last year when their cars were maybe 60, 70, 80 horsepower down on their rivals. But what didn't help us all, Danil Kvyat in his first day with the car broke the front wing off the RB11, and Red Bull didn't have a spare one. So imagine the frequent flyer miles they racked up having to fly a plane back to Milton Keynes to get another RB11 front wing rustled up for him. So, yeah, not ideal for Red Bull there, but hey, at least it was better than last year's Jerez test, that's for darn sure. Ferrari, this was the biggest surprise. I think Ferrari had probably the most positive test of any team out there. Very hard not to be impressed by Ferrari at the test. Definitely an improvement on what they were at last year. They were the fastest car on 3 of the 4 days. Sebastian Vettel seemed to be very positive about the car. He said that they've got a great base to work with. Kimi Raikkonen said the car feels a lot better than last year. And he said you get a rough idea very early on whether you know you've got a good car or not. And he said that this car definitely feels a lot better than where they were last year. So Ferrari seems to have made some progress. I think maybe James Allison's been getting to work on the car's aerodynamics under the hood, and Ferrari said they found more power in their engine this year. So, Vettel set the second fastest lap of the entire weekend. Raikkonen had the fastest lap of the whole weekend. But you've got to remember, Raikkonen's time was set on soft tyres, while Vettel's was set on mediums. So it looks like the Ferrari's definitely got some speed this year. Whether that 120.9 means anything in terms of context, we don't know yet. But all the reports out of Ferrari seem glowing and positive. Everyone seems to be loving Sebastian down in Italy. They're making the Schumacher comparisons. The morale in the camp seems higher than it's ever been before. So if you're a Ferrari fan, there's a lot of positives you can take away from the test. I think there's a lot of optimism in that camp, and as much as people want to praise Fernando for being the driver that he is, it's clear he's not a very good team manager because, apparently all the Ferrari guys were fearing Fernando back in those days, and they're talking about how, embracing that Vettel has been of the Ferrari camp and in Maranello and how hard he works and his work ethic. So there's a lot of positives to take out of the Ferrari camp at this point in time. So you've got to be, impressed. And, with the Ferrari setup at the moment, maybe it'll not be so good once they get to Australia. But for now, they're probably the team on the biggest upward swing at the moment, you could say, as opposed to anyone else in the field. Speaking of which, I'm going to make the comparison to Sauber, who are also running on Ferrari power again this year, and Sauber looked surprisingly fast as well. They were fastest on day 3. They were second fastest, I think, on the other 3 days. They revealed their 2015 car. It looks like it's dressed like a Despicable Me minion, given the fact it's blue and yellow. It looked okay, I suppose. It's nice to have a little bit of colour on the grid again, I suppose, rather than half the field being coloured in some form of grey. But as opposed to the car itself, very fast, good amount of laps racked up. But one of my friends, Sasha, pointed out to me on Skype during the testing, you may know him from the episode of the podcast we did where we reviewed the season. He mentioned, what if Sauber are running on low fuel deliberately on purpose in an attempt to look faster than what they are so they can get more sponsors? And that's not a bad theory, as a matter of fact. I've heard much more crazier conspiracy theories than that, but Sauber barely have any sponsors on their car at all this year, and I'm pretty sure the fact what I remember hearing was that Ferrari have more sponsors on their rear wing than Sauber do on their entire car. So if Sauber are looking for more sponsors, maybe a way to do that would be to give potential sponsors the illusion that they're faster than what they actually are. It's a sound theory. It definitely makes some sense. So maybe what we were seeing was Sauber on low fuel and close to the limit, just as an attempt to be more aggressive than what they actually were. But yeah, Felipe Nasr and Marcus Ericsson looks fine in there for the most part, but I'm not entirely convinced that's what we witnessed, and probably Sauber much closer to the maximum than all the other teams are running, I'd say, for the most part. McLaren, oh boy, McLaren definitely seem to have some reliability problems out there. Still struggling to get used to the Honda power unit. They got a little bit better. They ran 32 laps, was the most they ran on any given day, and I believe that was the day 4 of the test. But again, another power unit problem stopped them from getting further running in. So yeah, definitely a concern for the McLaren department. I mean, there was a lot of deflecting from Ron Dennis in camp, talking about how they're going to change the livery between now and the start of the season, which, you know, pleased a lot of the fans, because a lot of the fans weren't happy with their chrome and red, McLaren livery and what they did with it on the race department forums and whatnot. And people weren't particularly pleased with that, but they were very confident about the aerodynamic packaging and whatnot, and they seem to have what Red Bull had as a problem at last year's test, where they were packing everything in so tight into the back of their 2015 car that they were overheating. So yeah, definitely a bit of a cause for concern there, but I'm sure McLaren will get those issues ironed out between now and the start of the season, hopefully. Even so, their pace was very slow, so I don't think they were running at anything near max. I think they were coasting around, but at least the engine sounds nice, which I guess is a plus. Lotus were a day late. They didn't show up initially for day 1 of the test because the car caught fire in a demo run at Enstone, their own factory. The car caught fire and they couldn't make it out for day 1 in time, but they made it down for day 2 and actually got some decent run time in. Despite losing out a day, they looked okay the other 3 days. A little bit of reliability issues here and there, because Merckx did have a couple of power unit problems here and there during the test, but the car did look better and a little bit more competitive than it did last year. So looks like there's again a little bit of an upswing compared to last year. Romain Grosjean went out on the record and said that this car feels a lot better than last year's, which it had to be, given they're on Renault power and the fact the aero on the car was so terrible. The team's not really been able to recover from losing James Ellison. James Ellison is technical director and car designer, because Lotus's 2012 and 13 cars are pretty darn good. So, you know, if the reports again out of Lotus seem to be positive, which is, I guess, a good thing for F1's most banterous team. Force India didn't show up at all, believe it or not. Force India seemed to have paid the people to build the car quite late. And as a result, I think Vijay Mallya's check had bounced, so the 2015 car simply isn't ready yet, and they missed the whole Jerez test. They're going to miss the whole Barcelona test, the first Barcelona test next weekend, and they're saying they may not even be ready for the second Barcelona test either. So yeah, not exactly what you call a positive for Force India. It seems they're playing catch-up, and that's never a good sign when it comes to an F1 team, if they're playing catch-up and they can't afford to get their car built until now. I mean, that was only a couple of days ago the report came out that Force India finally was able to pay everybody off they needed to pay off to get a car. So yeah, not good for Force India, for a team that, you know, had a very good season last year, scored over 150 points. They need to get some running in there. I think they're going to run with the 2014 car, possibly as well, which I don't quite know what good that's going to do, but we'll have to wait and see, I suppose. And finally, Toro Rosso. Toro Rosso got some good laps in. Carlos Sainz Jr. and Max Verstappen got a fair amount of lappage in. Not particularly fast, but nobody really cares about Toro Rosso's car performance, really. Because let's be honest, they're a B team and the focus is on the drivers, and the car looked a little bit shaky out there. The drivers had a couple of iffy moments on track here and there, but not bad for the most part. But anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys thought of testing, anything you want to take away from it, any ongoing thoughts you had after the 4-day test. Let me know, I'd love to hear them. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, I've been Harrison101, thank you very much for watching, and sayonara.